and Charles attempted to kiss her in front of photographers, Diana swerved. She turned her face away. But that moment was actually captured by the press. Ooh, awkward. Awkward for Charles. Awkward for Charlie. And then headlines read, fairy tale over. I do my best to fact check everything I share, but please don't take any action based on the information here. And definitely don't quote me in your dissertation. Also, some viewer discretion is advised. Some stories may include graphic or potentially triggering content, so please take care when listening. And if I laugh at any point, just know it's never at the history or the people involved. Sometimes I just get a little awkward, or the drama is too wild not. Hello, everybody. Oh, my tiara fell off. Let's try that again. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of History in High Heels. Thank you very much. How is everyone? Happy Wednesday. How has your week been so far? Good? If it's not been good, then I'm sorry about that. But we have a really interesting episode today, a lovely deep dive. So guys, I'm gonna break some news to you, okay? This is the third last episode of the year. Oh, I know, but I need to take some time off of Christmas as well. I know. So today is the third, I believe. There are 2 more episodes to watch, and then I'm gonna go off and enjoy my festive holidays for a wee bit, and then I will rejoin you again in the new year. If there are any stories that you want to hear or any topics that you want me to touch on or speak about, then my DMs are always open. You can message me on Instagram. My @ is @historyinhighheels_ the podcast, or you can leave some comments on my YouTube. For any of you visual listeners out there, you can also watch me on YouTube today. So @historyinhighheels_ the podcast. If you enjoy this episode today, please tell your friends and family. Please share. I would love to get a bigger audience. I really appreciate everybody that's joined me so far. It's a lot of work that goes into this podcast. I am a one-woman show. So I really appreciate anything, any shares, any likes, any ratings, anything you can do if you enjoy the podcast. Really, really helps me out and means the world. So without further ado, I really feel like we should get into today's story. So if you're not a visual listener right now and seeing on YouTube, I currently am wearing a tiara. Yeah, I am. Because I just thought it was on brand for today's episode. Hello. So guys, whatever you're doing, get ready. Grab a snack, grab a nice drink, and let's get into it. Bestie, this is the real tea, okay? Because whether you love her or not, you cannot deny that Princess Diana made her mark on the entire world. Royal life, fashion icon, humanitarian work, breaking the AIDS stigma. And of course, the black revenge dress. And also, it goes without saying, her tragic and completely heartbreaking death. She was known as the People's Princess and a national treasure. And I know this, and I was born after she died, and I still know that, it's very well known that she was the People's Princess. She was very popular with the British public, but I've always wondered why. Today we're going to really deep dive into that. And also, this is another thing. For some people, Princess Diana is a controversial topic. Some people love her. Some people don't love her. And that's fine. Everyone is allowed their own opinion. But today I'm going to leave it up to you and see what you think. So without further ado, let's get into today's story. So, where do we begin? Okay, so Early life. So, Diana was born into British aristocracy in 1961, and she was actually born Diana Frances Spencer. Now, what I mean by aristocratic family is that they've basically got ties to nobility going back centuries. So she was already kind of on the royal scene. Like, she already kind of had some links, you know, or like her parents had links, or her grandparents had links, or however it works. But basically, her family held titles like Earl Spencer. So this meant that Diana grew up in a landed aristocracy. So she was living in stately homes, okay? She attended elite schools, and she was moving in the upper class social circles. And her grandparents were courtiers. Diana's family home was part of a land owned by the monarchy. So growing up, her parents actually divorced. So this is noted in a documentary that I watched, that this kind of disturbed her as a child. And later on in the documentary that I watched, she told somebody else that she would have never gotten married had she ever thought it would end in divorce, because of her parents' divorce. So you can tell by that, like she said something roughly like that, but you can tell by that sentence that that did hurt her. So anyway, she went to boarding school, and you know, it was noted that she wasn't really interested in dressing up. She wasn't really into that, which kind of contradicts what happens in later life, but never mind. She was kind of naughty in school. She would have little naughty midnight feasts when you're not allowed to do that. And then she would get punished by doing like weeding in the garden or something like that in the boarding school. So it was like little things like that. She also loved animals. She had this pet guinea pig that she took everywhere. It was like school outings, everywhere. She also loved to dance, and apparently I love to play piano too. She loved children. She's always loved children. She got a couple of jobs working as like a nanny type figure, and she had quite a sweet and nurturing nature. And she helped by working with children in hospitals, in nurseries, children's homes, all before her marriage. So that was a little bit about her early life. So then it kind of takes a turn in 1977 when Diana meets Prince Charles at a polo match. Now, something that flagged up to me was she was 19 and Charles was 31. I mean, I found that a bit weird. So Diana was apparently a good pick for him. You know, she was already from an aristocrat family. Charles was kind of a shy, formal guy, and Diana was very charming. And I guess he appealed to her as a young bride. So anyway, they spend a weekend in Balmoral. They're kind of dating. They're like, you know, it's nice and private, away from the public eye. And then suddenly, she is in the royal spotlight. Boom! There she goes. It's a total culture shock. Because, now, Diana grew up in the countryside. And although that is true, to me, countryside is like getting dirty on a farm with wild horses riding bareback, okay? My vision of countryside, that's obviously just mine. What I envision. She obviously was still very much upper class. So although she was in the countryside, she was still in that estate, in the very fancy estate. So anyway, she was familiar with the upper class and social circles, but she wasn't necessarily familiar with the intense scrutiny of the press or the palace staff or the global public. So very quickly she was like, oh my gosh. She had to learn royal etiquette and formal engagements and public poise, and I could not do that because I am a sloucher. I'm sorry, I know. I'm doing it right now. You can't see. Well, if you're on YouTube, you can see, so haha, if you're audio listening, you can't see me slouch. But anyway, she was being watched constantly. How she walked, how she spoke, and how she dressed. how she dressed. But she adored Charles. Pretty much from then on, she was getting papped. Journalists were following her. Every outfit, every smile, every gesture was photographed and analysed. And even in her quote-unquote first outing with Charles, she was already criticised for wearing black and a low neckline, which was already a breach of royal protocol and a lot of pressure at the age of 19. I mean, if I think back to what I was doing at 19, oh my gosh, it's crazy. So they were like, this is good. This is going well for me. And they decided to get engaged in February of 1981. And the engagement ring was, of course, a 12-carat sapphire surrounded by diamonds. So then, guys, the royal wedding happened. Okay, and it was the 29th of July, 1981. It happened at St. Paul's Cathedral in London, not Westminster Abbey, but that was due to St. Paul's being slightly more private, but still grand enough for a TV broadcast. Of course it was. So there was about 3,500 people, including foreign royals, head of state, celebrities, and aristocracy. The viewership, guys, I've not seen a number like this. 750 million people worldwide watched it on TV. The wedding to me was very much fairy tale. It very much reminded me of Cinderella, big puffy dress, blonde hair, just a proper princess wedding. Now, the dress was designed by David and Elizabeth Emanuel. I know David because he was on I'm a Celebrity a few years ago. Like, I don't know him personally, but like, that's how I knew. I was like, oh my gosh, hi. Yeah, and it was ivory silk, and it had 10,000 pearls on it, and a 25-foot train. They really said glamour, didn't they? The whole atmosphere, Diana was very nervous, but you know, she was radiant. She looked gorgeous. She seemed happy, charming. The public absolutely adored her. They loved her youth, they loved her beauty and her innocence, and it was the perfect contrast to Charles because he had like a more reserved image. Despite the spectacle, it was an immense amount of pressure. She had to perform perfectly. I mean, if you think about it, 750 million people were watching this worldwide. Crazy. And that wedding, it was called the wedding of the century. I know. Isn't that insane? Even on their honeymoon, there was photographers. People weren't really respecting the privacy, if you ask me, but I guess it just comes with being a new princess. They weren't like typical honeymooners. They had to jump into sudden public responsibilities like official visits and ceremonies and things like that. Diana, who was then called the Princess of Wales after being married, had to do like a speech in Wales, and she actually did some of it in Welsh, which I thought was very nice. I mean, it's expected, but it's still nice, like putting in the effort. It was around this time that allegedly, according to Andrew Morton's book, Diana, Her True Story, reported that Charles started making critical comments about Diana's weight. Things like calling her chubby. And that put her under immense stress and pressure. She was already facing all of that from the public, so she really didn't need that. She didn't need that from her new husband. Do you know what I mean? I'm saying it. It's my opinion. Can do what I want. Beyond his private criticisms, the press, joined in the bandwagon. Why not? She's a female. Let's just pick her apart. Let's compare her body size to other people. Yeah. Yes. So every outfit and hairstyle and public smile was photographed and analysed. Can you actually imagine what that's like, though? Imagine if you're just, like, having a bad hair day. And you're like, well, now it's going to be in the news. I know it was obviously so much worse than that. But, like, or even if you've got, like, a massive spot on your face or something. Sometimes you just don't want a picture taken. given that situation and all the royal expectations and then the media attention for Diana, I guess it created constant stress about her body image and behaviour. Diana then started developing eating disorders like bulimia as a way to cope with the stress and control her body amidst the constant criticisms. In my research, biographers really emphasised that it was not just about vanity. It really was a response to intense emotional stress and lack of support. And of course, the impossible standards that she was being kept up to. Diana was really vulnerable about this. I guess she became relatable to a lot of people, and the public became sympathetic towards her because she was vulnerable and open about her vulnerability. When she became a mother, this was a huge turning point for her and her confidence, independence, and influence, in the royal family. William was born on the 1st of June 1982, and then Prince Harry was born on the 15th of September 1984. And she was quite a young mum. And she was still adjusting to royal life. Caring for her sons really helped Diana find her own voice and her own authority, both privately and in public. And she developed resilience against the pressures of the palace and media intrusion. And there was even a clip. There's a clip that you can see on YouTube, and I've seen it a good few times, of there's like paparazzi and press trying to get, a glimpse of Diana on a family holiday with her boys. And she goes up to the paparazzi, and I can't remember quote for quote what she says, but she says leave me alone. She didn't say that, but it was giving, I'm reading in between the lines. She was like, can you please leave me and my sons alone? They're children. And you know what? Her influence kind of slayed. As a mother, she started challenging outdated royal protocols, especially around media affection and engagement with her children. So you can also see another thing that Diana is so iconic for is entering the parents' race at Prince Harry and Prince William's school day. She entered the parents' race, which was apparently something that you're not meant to do if you're part of the royal family. So thank you, icon. Yes, and then she started introducing more modern and compassionate approaches to parenting within the royal family. She wanted to have more of a hands-on approach with her kids. She would say to them, go into the shop, here's some money, go into the shop and buy some sweets and interact with the cashier or whatever. And that was just to give them a taste of people that weren't associated with royals, that weren't associated with the upper class, almost the norms, the muggles, which I also find when I learnt that information, I was nothing sounds wrong about it, but it does. Do you know what I mean? Go and hang about with the normal people, with the less. Do you know what I mean? Go and hang out with the lower class. That's what it was giving. But I know that it probably wasn't meant like that, but it does kind of sound like that when you're go and interact with working class. That's what it was giving. And she pushed for more public appearances. So this was more showing the royal family as warm and relatable rather than quite distant and formal. And she learned her role and she connected with people. She was kneeling to children and she was winning hearts worldwide. She was a rising star. She was. And she was learning her role. She was initially quite unexperienced and shy, and she adapted her natural warmth to formal occasions, and she was known for her authentic empathy. She listened and she smiled and she engaged personally with quote unquote ordinary people, But you see, there is a factor that I've not yet mentioned. The Camilla factor. Dun, dun, dun. I know. So Camilla Camilla Parker Bowles, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, she had been romantically linked to Charles before Diana. I know, this is where the scandal really begins. So after Diana's marriage, right, Camilla re-entered the group chat. She came back. She came back in Charles's life, which was emotionally significant for him, apparently. But when Camilla came back in the picture, apparently she was married to someone else. I know. But Charles and Camilla, still remained close. They apparently still remained friends, which caused tension and confusion for Diana. Well, of course it would. Why are you still trying to get with my mans? So Diana, she tried to maintain her marriage and find stability, but Charles was becoming more emotionally distant, and continued attachment to Camilla made this nearly impossible. And then the public started noticing. They were like, there's trouble in paradise, there's trouble. And they were beginning to become aware of the marital tensions, which intensified Diana's stress. She was like, now I've got all them to worry about. So then, of course, the polo match happens. It's quite sad because it's like, I don't want to say it's full circle, but they met at a polo match and now this is happening at a polo match. I know. So there was a polo match that happened. Polo match. Say, take a shot every time I say polo match. Polo match A. Polo match. Right. So they were basically at this public polo match. And Charles attempted to kiss her in front of photographers. Diana swerved. Diana swerved. She turned her face away. But that moment was actually captured by the press. Ooh, awkward. Awkward for Charles. Awkward for Charlie. And then headlines read, fairy tale over. And that symbolized the marriage's breakdown in the public eye. Yes, it did. So, come December 1992, Charles and Diana were officially publicly separated. Yes. Diana began living independently and gained more control over her life and public image. Now this is where the baddie comes out. Thank you. We're entering our baddie era. So, what does any girl do when they finish with a guy, or they're breaking up, or there's a big change in her life? What is the first thing that she will change? Her hair, yeah. She changed her hair, baby, and along came the iconic haircut. Oh, my tiara. The iconic haircut, which came around 93 or 94, where she cut her long, traditional royal hairstyle into short, modern, layered cut. I know. The cut became instantly iconic, okay? It influenced fashion and hairstyles worldwide. But it was more than just a style change. This is the thing with our haircuts. They're more than just a style change. It symbolizes something. And for her, it symbolized a break from the constraints of royal expectations. She was like, I don't need this anymore. It represented her control. She was regaining control. She was independent. And it was an innovation. It showed that Diana was taking charge of her image and her life. Thank you. Rather than it being defined by her marriage. This is a sad bit, okay? Because what we were all thinking has now been confirmed. Charles, his emotional and physical involvement with Camilla was confirmed publicly in 1994 during the BBC Panorama interview, where he admitted that he had been unfaithful and continued to love Camilla. Biographers, royal historians, and letters also collaborate that the affair spanned before and during his marriage to Diana, making it a long-term situation. Charles. What was that? So embarrassing. It's June 29th, 1994. Oh, look at that. It's the same night that BBC Panorama interview is being aired. What? I know. And it's also, funnily enough, Vanity Fair gallery party. So that interview was being aired and Charles was admitting his affair that he had on Diana with Camilla. Miss Thing, Diana, rocks up to a Vanity Fair / Serpentine, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, gallery party. And this is where it goes off, okay? Miss Diana appeared coming out of the car, not covered in snot, not with takeaway bags all over her, but in an off-the-shoulder, figure-hugging, black evening gown. Looking gorgeous. Looking stunning. Not a tear. Not a tear mark on that face. The dress, it was daring and glamorous, and it was completely different from the previous and more conservative royal style. The dress was more than just fashion, again like the haircut. It was a public declaration of confidence and independence. Wearing it on the same night as Charles's admission made a statement. Yes, it did. Anyone can see that. Thank you. Diana could own the attention and command the narrative despite the personal betrayal. Doing this absolute boss move, Diana controlled the narrative. The night suddenly became all about her, wearing this glamorous dress that was completely unlike anything that she wore before, completely taking all the media, all the news, all the gasp, all the gossip away from Charles onto her. Smart diva move. So she was also like, it was also giving, I'm free of the royals. I'm free of the royals. Because the dress was so scandalous. Like, it wasn't just something that she would never wear before. It's that they weren't allowed to wear it. So she was really like, well, I'm gonna wear what I want then. Thank you. So anyway, the divorce, right, it was finalized in August 28th, 1996, and it was filed by Charles. So, but she continued to do her thing, you know. She continued her charitable work and her public appearances and all her media engagements. Now I'm going to speak about some of Diana's like hands-on humanitarian work. This is something that I find like incredible. Whether you like Diana or not, you cannot deny what she done for breaking the AIDS stigma. The handshake that changed the world. Let me tell you, when Diana shook hands, like bare hands, with an AIDS patient at London Middlesex Hospital, it was a shocking time. It was absolutely shocking for the time. People at this time, like at that time in the 80s, 90s, were terrified of AIDS. Terrified. Because I guess they didn't know enough about it yet. There was myths everywhere that you could get it from touch, that you could get it from sharing objects, or even just being near somebody. And Diana shattered all of that. All of that in one photograph. Doctors later said that the moment did more to educate the public than years of medical briefings. And Diana didn't just visit, she was hugging patients, she sat on their beds, she listened to their stories, she looked at them in the eyes with total compassion. Most public figures at that time avoided HIV and AIDS wards entirely. But Diana, she walked straight in. People that had AIDS later said that she made them feel human again. That speaks volumes. She used her royal platform to educate. She said publicly, "AIDS does not make people dangerous to know." This, of course, was like the new image of royalty, because before Diana, royals were mostly gloved, untouchable, and distant. But Diana walked in, ungloved, touched people directly, and showed the world that compassion was way more powerful than stigma. Now, I wasn't alive at this time, but I can already tell how much, like just by reading that and researching it, how important it was that that stigma was broken. And whether, it wasn't just Diana, whether there was, other awareness groups happening right now, whatever, the world needed that, and she did that. So her advocacy helped shift the public's understanding, and it encouraged more funding and reduced shame around testing and diagnosis. And HIV/AIDS charities today still credit Diana for being a turning point in public acceptance. And just to give this a little bit more depth, Diana was drawn to the AIDS crisis because she was horrified by the cruelty of the AIDS stigma. People losing their jobs, people untouchable even to family, spoken about with fear, and left to die alone. Diana realised that one compassionate gesture on camera could undo some of the fear. So she made sure the world was watching her as she touched and embraced HIV-positive patients. She preferred causes where she could make direct human impact, not just cut ribbons and take bloody pictures. It makes me really sad because some of these people will have just wanted a hug and people are too scared to give them that. It tugs on your heartstrings a little bit. Oh, I didn't realise that people were losing their jobs. Many early patients were gay men, and because Diana had close LGBTQ+ friends in fashion and the arts, their suffering felt personal to her. Oh, I've got a lamp, guys. It is so sad because they must have been so confused and must have felt so isolated. And nobody wanted to be near them, their own families. Oh, she also provided some landmine awareness. So we're talking 1990s. In the 1990s, Diana famously walked through minefields in Angola, Bosnia, and other countries, raising awareness about the devastating human cost of landmines. She worked with organisations like the Halo Trust, promoting mine clearance and supporting victims. The effort helped spur international action, including eventual Ottawa Treaty banning personal landmines. She also was an advocate for mental health, and she publicly addressed issues like bulimia and mental health, drawing in her own personal experiences. She helped destigmatize these topics, encouraging open conversation and support for sufferers. She was hands-on with her humanitarian visits. She regularly visited hospitals, orphanages, shelters, and hospices, and often spent hours with patients and staff. And she emphasized personal connection, showing empathy beyond formal royal protocol. She even got an award. In December 1995, she was named Humanitarian of the Year by the United Cerebral Palsy Organization in New York for her philanthropy work. I don't know how to say that word, philanthropy. Around the same time, she also received a gold medal at a health conference organized by Pio Manzu Center for her work supporting the elderly. Yeah. And then post her death, her legacy continues through the Diana Award, which was established in 1999. The award recognizes outstanding young people aged 9 to 25 for their social action and humanitarian work. just saying, but while other royals have been involved in charity, Diana's hands-on, highly public and sometimes controversial approach set her apart, and very few other royals received the same level of global humanitarian acknowledgement while alive, particularly for direct advocacy in taboo areas like AIDS and landmines. So, I know, she sounds like a terrific person. I really enjoyed doing this research on her, but there was a question still kind of burning for me in that, why do some people not like her? And this is what I found in my research. It's not my personal opinion. If it was, I would just say that, but it's not. This is just the research that I found. So some people dislike Diana because they believed that she kind of used the media and loved the spotlight, arguing that she used high emotion photo moments like hugging AIDS patients or walking through landmines to shape her public image. And others criticised her emotional openness, viewing her honesty about bulimia, depression and loneliness as unstable or manipulative, especially in an era where mental health wasn't understood and royals were expected to stay silent. Within palace circles, she was seen as too unpredictable. She was too hands-on, too rebellious, and too modern. You know, kneeling on hospital floors, touching people. Ugh, I know. It would have horrified the old guard, to say the least. Her public interviews, especially in 1995, the Panorama interview, she famously said the quote, "There were 3 of us in this marriage." That didn't go down well for some people. I think it's kind of... But it led to some royal supporters to believe that she was embarrassing the monarchy. Or weaponizing the public sympathy. So she also apparently, some people think that she was overshadowing Charles. How can this be? And that made traditionalists uncomfortable, The British monarchy has been going for a long time. You've got some hardcore fans in there, as crowds adored her far more than the future king. And in a very gender dynamic, people who are uncomfortable with emotional women labeled her as dramatic or manipulative. And of course, there's the classic, if men in power show their emotion, they're strong. Okay? If women are in pain, they're being dramatic or performative, or they're just attention seeking. So in short, Diana's humanity made her beloved by millions, but disliked by those who just preferred the monarchy or, had their own opinion, and that's fine. Some people you just don't like. So now the following information I've got from a documentary called Diana, the Icon Who Became Bigger Than the Crown. It was a documentary I found on YouTube. I just want to put this here now because it goes into some details that and asks some questions that I think is hard to find on other reports, but I want to include it in my video today. It is also an old video, so all the information might not be up to date as it could possibly be. It is as up to date as I could find it, but yes, I just want to give that a little bit more of a disclosure there, especially when I come to talk about the cameras and the emergency protocols that were followed. It doesn't necessarily say that on other reports, so I just want to make that completely clear just now. So here we go, though. We're going to step into one of the most devastating moments in recent history, the night that Princess Diana died. It's 1997 and it's in Paris, and what happened in those early hours is something that continues to haunt people even now. So the documentary explains that Diana was being intensely pursued by paparazzi. Her driver, who was reportedly over the alcohol limit, was speeding through a tunnel. And astonishingly, 11 of the CCTV cameras in that area were not working this night. And that meant that no actual footage was captured inside the tunnel. So nobody knows what actually happened. But the car crashed. The crash itself was absolutely horrific. There are pictures online. I don't advise you go and see them because the car is completely crumpled. It is truly horrific. The car was mangled beyond recognition, and that is true. Inside the car were Diana, her boyfriend Dodi Fayed, the driver Henry Paul, and their bodyguard Trevor Rees Jones. Trevor was the only survivor of the crash. The other three sadly perished because of the severity of their injuries. Trevor has no memory of what happened in the moments leading up to the collision. Investigators later suggested that Diana wasn't wearing her seatbelt at the time of the crash. Many experts believed she might have survived had she been restrained. A heartbreaking detail. But what followed raised even more questions than the crash itself. The journey from the tunnel to the hospital was only a few miles, a trip that should have been quick. But instead, the ambulance allegedly took 90 minutes to drive. There were unexplained stops and delays and procedures that didn't align with a typical emergency response. The wrecked car was never independently inspected, and parts of the scene were cleared in ways that many found unsettling. Because of these strange gaps and contradictions, speculation spread quickly. Why were the cameras down? Was the driver truly impaired? Could she have survived with faster medical care? Who was responsible for the delay? She was still alive, but then she later died in hospital. Even with official investigations, many people felt they weren't given the answers that truly made sense, which only deepened the sense of loss and confusion. Diana's funeral was televised, and it was one of the most watched events in broadcast history. Millions around the world watched as her coffin was carried through the streets of London and laid to rest. As for her sons, Prince William and Prince Harry, they were both very young at this time. William was 15 and Harry was 12. The world's reaction was overwhelming. The streets were filled with flowers. There was flowers all over Buckingham Palace. And you can watch the funeral, as it says, it was broadcast on TV, one of the most watched things in broadcast history. But even just watching a snippet of seeing the British public crying, and you really get a feel for how much this woman connected with people and how she really got the name, the People's Princess. It's really heartbreaking to watch. It was a global movement of grief. Diana's death felt personal to millions. Her passing wasn't simply a royal tragedy. It wasn't, it was the loss of a woman who was warm and compassionate, and her presence had touched hearts everywhere. Diana wasn't just a princess, she was a woman who rewrote the rules of royalty and compassion. Her life, her heart, and even her tragic death had left a mark that the world will never forget. History remembers her not for the crown, but for the way she made the world feel. And that's unforgettable. So that is all for today. I know it was a longer one. It really was. Oh, my camera's just turned off. Oh no. Sorry guys, you're gonna have to go with the audio version. So yeah. Wow, what an episode, right? So this is the thing, right? You are totally allowed to have your own opinion. You can walk around, right? On a real level, you can walk around with a halo on your head and not everybody's going to like you. And that's just the way that it is. If you don't like Diana, you don't like her. That's fine. I personally, my personal opinion is that I really do understand why she's called the People's Princess. I think that she led a really good example for how I would like royalty to be done in this country. I think that they need to be, it's so important to have influential figures in important conversations and demonstrating what should be done in the world. I think that if you put people in important power, there should be important responsibility that comes along with that. It is a heartbreaking story. She definitely deserved better, and that's why I'm saying her name and giving her a voice on this podcast, because that's what it's all about. She was taken far too young, but she will always be remembered as the People's Princess. So guys, if you've enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends and family about the podcast. As I say, we've got 2 episodes left of this year, and then you're going to go and have an amazing Christmas and New Year, and we will catch up again in January. But yes, 2 more episodes still, so do not worry about that. If you have enjoyed the podcast today, please give me a 5-star review. Speaking of likes and shares, if you want to follow me on social media, you can follow me on Instagram. It's the same as my YouTube channel. It's at historyinhighheels_the podcast. And if you would like to follow me on TikTok, it's all one word, History in High Heels, the pod. Thank you truly so much for tuning in today. I can't believe that we're nearly finished season 1. It is insane. But yes, thank you again so much, and I will speak to you next Wednesday with our next episode. Bye bye.